Good morning, wonderful people. Good morning. Look, I can see the comments already coming in. It's lovely to have you all here. And this is no ordinary morning. It is this. I've made the 50th episode. Who would ever guess? There have now been more episodes than I've lived life, which begins to give you a bit of a hint of how old I am. But if I can, a happy 50th episode to myself, but to all of you watching. I'm actually quite excited. This was an idea Bob and I had late last year to run this, and I remember sitting down with the team. I won't name them all because some of them like a bit of anonymity, but sat down with all the team and bouncing ideas around. And I will say it was Ken, I'm pretty sure, who came up with the topic solid ground. So welcome if you're a first timer. Solid ground it's a pun. First and foremost, it's about discussing the issues of the day: cultural, political, social, ethical, with what we believe is a good, well, pretty much conservative lens, good philosophical and ethical grounding on these topics of the day. But it's also a terrible pun because regular followers know I love a pun. And so solid ground references a most excellent cup of coffee. And this morning, if you're here last week, I didn't have it because my stepkids had nicked it, which is not a bad thing in and of itself. So yeah, anyway, guys, it's wonderful to be here. Can I just say hello? I've got a whole lot of comments here to Trinity. Lovely to have you along. From Michael, thank you very much. Got lovely Jackie. Now, I saw Raitihi in the news earlier in the week. Something to do, sounds ridiculous, recycling collection. I think you can correct me. Suzanne, lovely to have you here. Chris, thank you for the photos too the other day. That place looks amazing. Dean, lovely to have you along. Disarray, lovely to have you here too. Rosie's been one of the faithful followers from the very start. In fact, a number of you here, I recognise the names. Susan celebrating as a 50th episode, which is, I think, brilliant. Darren, lovely to have you here. And Lynette, again, Lynette's been one of the ones, I would say, almost, if not from the very beginning. So guys, and to the other I haven't got to yet, lovely to have you all along here today. Look, as always, there's no shortage of stuff to discuss. I thought I'd just start with this one, though, because I just thought it was, I don't know, I think it was just lovely in and of itself. 116, I'll be stunned. I'll be stunned if I even get anywhere near that. But this was a nun, actually, in Brazil, and I suppose reason to share it is twofold. One is, 116, as I say, is remarkable. But also, if you read the article, if you read about her life, just actually the life that she's lived, a prayerful life, her relationship with God has been a big, big part of it. So I think that's fantastic in and of itself. So thank you to Ian, and good morning to Alex as well. So as I say, I think a little bit of good news. And Gordon, I can see you here. Lovely to have you. Actually, I can do this. To Gordon, hello. And yeah, Jackie says, fortunately, in this case, I'm right. Ray Teehee was talking about recycling. See, I keep my eye on what's happening around this country. And we've got lovely Jackie there from Palmerston North. Lovely to have you along. So as I say, I just thought it was nice. A nice news story. Lots of talk, as you might imagine, too, about the Pope. I'm not actually going to spend much time on that. I think the media has done it to death. But if you're interested in my thoughts, you can check out at the very end of Straight Talk last night, myself, Brendan Malone, Peter Williams and Ate Moala talked about why the media seems obsessed. You can also jump onto my Substack, so look up my name on substack.com, and you can see literally a 4-minute video. I shared it onto my LinkedIn and Facebook too, but I think fundamentally the New Zealand media forget that he's a spiritual person and put everything through that lens. But anyway, the media's done the Pope to death. And so, look, I'm pleased. I'm Catholic, as you know. I'm pleased that it's all sorted. We watch with curiosity, but I actually watch it with some confidence as well, because it's not the Pope's job. Maybe I'll quickly say this. It's not the Pope's job to change the teachings. It's to protect them. Jackie says of this nun, Imagine what a life. Look, agreed. I mean, I should have done the math, and one of you guys will be faster and quicker than me, but if we're in 2025 and she's 116, she must have been born in like 1891. I'm getting to get that. You can correct me, guys, if I'm wrong, but if it is true, 1891, if I've got my math right, she would have seen the Victorian era, even though she's Brazilian. I think there would have been an emperor. I'm not being stupid. There would have been a king or an emperor on the throne of Brazil at the time. She would have, of course, seen both world wars and everything. I mean, just remarkable. Really, why I shared it, thought it was remarkable. What is not remarkable is, and I'm going to put this meme up and I'll explain. It's from the Free Speech Union. It's the appalling behaviour, two words, duplicity and hypocrisy. There we go. I was going to make up a new word for you. Of the mainstream media, and particularly Andrea Vance, who wrote in the Post. So you'll all know that last week the government went out and changed pay equity. I think that's really important. Changed pay equity. But the way they did it, because I wrote about it, even got into the Herald on the weekend, but they did it in such a way that's really fired people up, because they did it in urgency. They didn't tell anyone it was coming. They can't answer any of the questions around it. But it's hit a nerve, because pay equity, these claims, it's where people say, hey, look, I'm in an undervalued workforce, primarily female. And so they go, oh, okay, the law says, right, well, we agree. So you're a care worker or a librarian or whatever. We agree, because you're predominantly women, you're underpaid. Then they go about working out, well, okay, we're going to compare librarians with fisheries officers, or we're going to compare this profession with engineers, and so on. For me, it's all a little bit arbitrary, to be honest, and I'm not conceptually against relooking at the law. It's going to cost you, the taxpayer, billions. Chris has rightly pulled me up 1909. How did I get to 1891? So anyway, you can see to keep me to philosophy, not math. So long and short, that's a very quick skim of pay equity. But as you can imagine, its perception in the public is that the income of women and the poorest income, particularly women, are going to be affected. Now, importantly, just before we get to the Andrea Vance part, importantly, no one's income's been cut. Okay, this is about future claims. So it's not as if someone's going to go and say, I'm sorry, you're on 25 an hour, now you're on 22. It's not that. It's just that they won't be able to claim more under the current or the previous regime. Sorry. So long and short, pay equity, the perception, the optics is lower income woman. And the way that the government handle it, as I wrote about it is terrible optics to ram it through. It doesn't put, in this case, the coalition, the centre-right government in a very, I would argue, a very good position. Again, it looks like they're picking on the poorest, and in this case, women. So they're all up in arms, as you might imagine. The unions are up in arms. They're staging protests outside the PM's place, MP's houses. The PM fled the Parliament last week, didn't want to be seen. I mean, again, all bad optics. But the main point of where I'm attempting to get to, and Rosie's now with a comment, is an article over the weekend. I'm not going to show it or read it. You can jump onto the Post and find it. But basically, she tore strips off the government. She's clearly very angry at what the government's decided to do. And she's allowed to be, just as people are happy with what they've done. But absolutely furious and making the argument this is women attacking women. And then she went to basically call out the senior ministers, so the likes of Nicola Willis and others, and called them a C. Now, of course, this is solid ground. This is a family first show. I'm not going to say what the word was, but she used the C word, the worst of the C words. So appalling in and of itself that a reporter, in this case Andrea Vance, would even choose to use the word, but she did. And she wrote it into her article, again, targeting women MPs, and particularly women ministers, and calling them that. She's then gone on to obviously get that through the editor. The editor's name is Tracy Watkins of, is it the Sunday Star Times? So it got published. And what is striking, and that's why I put this meme up from the Free Speech Union. Now, it's from Star Wars, if you don't know. It's Anakin talking to his wife, and she looks, well, you can work it out. Hopefully it's explanatory. And Rosie's beginning to note the issue here. The media for the last few weeks in particular have been running a whole lot of stories if you've been following it. I mean, in a hopeful way, you've been watching the likes of Family First, RCR, and the platform. But if you've been following the mainstream media, lots of puff piece stories about just, the terrible time that female MPs in particular go through, all the abuse. They talk about Tory Whānau and how hard it is because she's a woman in politics, and not just that, a Maori woman in politics. So story after story. Supposed research about just how terrible all this gendered violence is in Parliament. And yet here we have the media itself, the same media reporting about the nastiness towards women, abusing women in the worst terms. And as this little meme points out, and it's still true this morning, none of the senior media figures are calling this out. The New Zealand Herald, I think Shane Curry's his name, writes something called Media Insider. It's like usually a daily brief. He used to be the editor, I think, of the New Zealand Herald. Again, just making excuses. The wider narrative is, this word's been used before. Well, Andrea was frustrated. They're allowed to use it. It is, again, as I said, it's derogatory, it's disgusting, it's wrong, it's not appropriate, it's definitely not professional. But as I said too, it's hypocritical because the media run about yelling and screaming about supposedly misogyny, gendered violence, gendered language, and all of this stuff. But when it comes to their own behaviour, it doesn't matter. And so maybe, guys, that's 2 points that I would put to you. And I've talked about it before, and hopefully not to bore you. But have you noticed that the progressives are usually the very things they accuse others of being? So I'll say that again. The progressives, and particularly those on the left, but as you know, progressivism affects the right as well. Progressives, or the woke, whatever term you want to use, they are the very things they accuse others of being. So just as the media over the last few weeks, months, if not years, has breathlessly talked about all the misogynistic violence against women, and again, anytime someone like a Tory Whānau resigns because she's incompetent, not because she's a woman, women are competent, I've found. So all of this, they breathlessly report. And yet, they are the ones, actually, running about using the C word. As I say, Andrea Vance in that article, and now being defended by her colleagues that it's okay and appropriate. Which brings me to the second point. You're dealing here with, as I say, progressives, which means that they buy into cultural Marxism, which means that they believe they have the truth. Okay, it's like a religious zealotry, really. They believe they have the truth. They don't have to report both sides. They actually don't even have to be professional. They just need to be about what they perceive as truth. And so, in their mind, in the writer's mind, clearly editors and others, it's okay to run about screaming the C word at senior female members of Parliament because they believe, the media, that they're on the right side of this pay equity. They've sat down and said, we don't like this government. In fact, they hate this government. You can see that in the reporting, which makes it a very hard road for Christopher Luxon and others. They've decided they hate this government and they don't like what they did around pay equity. So all they're going to do is attack. And they'll do whatever they want. And I can't quite read it anymore, but I think the Free Speech Union who came up with this, which I thought was exceptionally clever, saying, well, surely the legacy media and others are going to call this out. But they haven't. So that just tells you all you need to know, I'm afraid to say, of the mainstream media. If you want something that's more respectful, you can jump onto my Substack. So that's my one there that I wrote the other day, saying actually exactly what we're just talking about at the moment. It's me, not exactly what we're talking about, it's me talking about the pay equity. Basically saying, okay with pay equity changes, but absolutely terrible that the way the governments handle it. And happy to say that there will be no C word in that. Dean, I think, right, I'm just looking at some of the comments talking around the post, Andrea Vance and the use of the C word. Had this been a parliamentarian, it would have been absolutely appalling. Yeah, I mean, Alex raises a point. There's still this public journalism fund is still being drawn on, but one of the best things we could actually do is stop government advertising. stop government advertising. That would pretty much finish off the mainstream media in a heartbeat in this country. Sue's right. If it had been a man, they'd have been cancelled. I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but she's dead right. And this is, again, the hypocrisy in play. This is a woman, Andrea Vance, attacking female MPs with the C word. It's women abusing women, and therefore it has to, in this case, be slightly pushed under the carpet, because Sue is completely right. Sue is completely right. Had this been a man, had this been a Chris Luxon, imagine that. Had this been a male journalist, all hell would break loose. Dean's right again. I mean, this is about Tory whānau. They're exactly right. All the puff pieces are nothing to do with actually her personal struggles, clearly problems that needs help. I remember saying that at the time. Someone who needs help. Not that this is a misogynistic, gendered issue. In fact, I don't know about you guys. Basically, anytime I see that reporting, you know that they're covering for something. Excellent points there from Rose. You've got Philippa as well. And Trinity's right. There isn't any standards. And I think, if they want to be that, they can. But they can't in the same breath tell us that they're professionals. And nor should they be treated like that. And I think Dean, I'll leave it on here. Dean's on fire. You're on fire, my friend. It is. It just tells you about the state of the media here. It's just not on. But it happens far, far too often. Hey, in other news, this one had possibly passed over and it's slightly foreign affairsy. If you know anything about me, I get fired up about the China question. But this is a former Supreme Court Justice in New Zealand. William Young is his name. He's retired. So as a former judge who's been in this is important context, because he's now off to Hong Kong. He's decided it's a great idea to go and sit on the highest appeal court of Hong Kong, which is basically a kangaroo court controlled by the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party. So I think a terrible look for him. Actually calls into question his notions of justice, to be honest. The court in Hong Kong has basically, the highest court is made up usually of judges in the past, from Australia, New Zealand, the UK, Canada. Because Hong Kong's so small that the highest court, they wanted to have a series of independent people. But since 2020, when China cracked down on democracy in Hong Kong, they passed a law called the National Security Law. They crushed basically democracy there. All the other political parties have been closed down. There is no longer a free media. In fact, one of the owners of the biggest independent newspaper, Jimmy Lai is his name, is languishing in prison. They've arrested MPs, democracy advocates, and so forth. Cardinal Joseph Zen, so the cardinal, the prince of the church, was arrested. They're all languishing in either jail or they're suspended sentence. Long and short, it's just an absolute sham. The court is no longer a legitimate court of justice. But this fella here, who got to the highest echelons of our courts, who was one of our Supreme Court justices, decided it is a great idea to go and, by just being there, legitimize a totalitarian communist regime. And I just think it's absolutely appalling. Kudos to the Herald. They actually picked up the story and took some comment from me. Stuff has been running it as well. This guy has formed since, was it a few years ago, he wanted to go onto a court in Dubai. And human rights activists, I didn't know this, but human rights activists jumped up and down about that. So I don't know what's going on. Judges are exceptional, because someone's asking here, is money the motivation? Look, who knows? All I can tell you is judges are paid an enormous amount of money, and their superannuation scheme would make most of us blush. So I don't know what's going on. But remember his face and name, because I think it's absolutely shameful that a judge would do this. And I'm also interested to know what the government knew and when. Now, I better be clear, the New Zealand government, to be really clear, does not make these appointments. That's really important for us all to understand. The New Zealand government doesn't make appointments to Hong Kong. That's for the Hong Kongers to do. Again, and the whole system there is basically broken. It's controlled now by a totalitarian state. But I'd be interested when New Zealand government just knew, simply so that, did they say anything? It's just, anyway, terrible. On slightly better things, remember, we've got our family forum coming up in August. It's now open. You can jump onto forumonthefamily.nz and register. We'd love to have you there. We literally have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. We get more people than political conferences in New Zealand, which is amazing. And one of our fantastic guests is this young lady who I had the privilege of interviewing a few months back. It's Kira Lee.
Hi, I'm Kira Lee Smith from binary.org.au, and I'm really looking forward to seeing you at Forum on the Family 2025.
So Kira Lee's along with all the other speakers, as you can see, Israel and Maria Falau as well. They hopefully will be physically joining us there, but if not, Bob will be interviewing them live. Hey, look, a couple of last points. It's these, they call Sal Grover. She's an activist, a woman's advocate in Australia, but I just thought she's been on fire, and I just find it absolutely hilarious. So Adam Bant, former Green Party leader in Australia, but as you know, they've just had their elections, and well, basically, he's all with the woke ideas and all about the pronouns and all of that stuff. But the Daily Mail calling him out, and as is Sal, he's all about changing women's names and phrases. But when he's talking about himself, he falls back onto the usual father, mother. Again, it's a small point, but you see this all, and Bob's brilliant at this, as in Bob McCoskrie in his blogs, because he points out all the hypocritical elements that are often in play with these groups. But I thought Sal was really on fire, because I stumbled across this one as well. So that Nicola Sturgeon is a former leader in Scotland, woke as they come, and you're trying to deploy the usual argument, oh my God, lives are at risk, no one talk, no one say anything. This is the type of person who would never be able to leave their house if you applied that argument to daily living, because, something could go wrong. But Sal nails it, if your life's almost unlivable because society at large won't indulge your lie, it's a problem with your lie, not society. And I thought really it sums things up. It's also often what I think about when you see a lot of the discussion around society, there's lots of vulnerable groups, and then there's a lot of others where their vulnerability, it's all projected onto other people. So it's like, well, and the trans communities are one of them, or the queer community, or whatever. Very much all the focus is on everybody else, that their lives aren't as good because of everything else around them. And that's demonstrably false, because actually the biggest and most important driver in your life is yourself. And it's one of the things I've found when the likes of the Nicola Sturgeons and them speak. There seems to be no reflection on the persons themselves. The guy who now thinks he's a woman, who's trying to often, not all by the way, let's be really important, there are some people who make that choice who just live quietly, but there's that activist base demanding, thrusting, pushing themselves into society. But all the reflection is on society, rather than go, well, what about you? What about the individual? And again, so much in modern progressive thinking is about stigma. And I've written about this in the past, but the idea that everything that goes wrong in my life is because of what's happening outside. Where actually most of us know what's happening in your life, if you're happy or sad, of course it's influenced from outside, but it's also highly influenced by the decisions that you make, the decisions that you decide upon. And there's no reflection of that. And again, I thought Sal just nailed it with that, and I just thought it was very, very, very funny. Guys, I'm going to leave it there. There's a whole lot more to share with you, including ludicrousy here in New Zealand around birth certificates, and also around the RSE. Again, just some of the pushback that's happening. Look, there is no shortage of stuff to share, but I need to roll on. This, the 50th episode. So again, guys, it's been marvelous to have you along here on solid ground. Grateful to Bob and the Family First team to be able to do this. It's something I look forward to doing every Tuesday and Thursday morning, and that's a reminder actually. Obviously, Family First now does shows every morning at 7:30. Bob on the Monday, Wednesdays and Fridays, and myself on Tuesday and Thursday. I mentioned obviously we've got my Substack. If you want to read rather than listen, so to speak, you can jump onto my Substack. And Bob does one as well. Again, he was just pointing out the hypocrisy of late in media. If you like broader media, obviously Family First has a huge range, but you can also jump onto Reality Check or RCR. I've actually done a monologue, just me sharing some of my reflections and photos, and actually I've just sat down with Rodney Hyde. If you jump onto the rcr.media, that's the website address, rcr.media, you can see my interview with Rodney Hyde. So look, lots Lots to do, lots to say. There's no shortage. And so always know you can jump onto familyfirst.org.nz on that website. On our website, you'll see all the McBlogs, you'll see all the solid grounds, our family matters. There's just no shortage of stuff. So guys, I'm going to leave it there. I hope you have a wonderful day. As I say, 50 episodes. Here's to 50 more. But in the meantime, as I try to find my little outro here, which I cannot find, isn't that just the story? There we go. The outro's little music I play at the end. Guys, it's wonderful to have you along here. I'll see you on Thursday morning.